Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mamaverse, the ultimate self-care experience for every mom. Our guest is Sue McCarroll. So, Sue, you're owner of Opal Wellness Studios. You're an integrative nutrition and health coach, and your mission is to make total wellness for moms available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to add any more to that?
Yeah, I have a podcast too called the Well to You podcast. And I feel like I probably forgot to put that in for you, but it is all about bringing wellness to women, moms, all women, and really showing women that it's body, mind, and spirit, and that it doesn't have anything to do with those six-pack jeans and the size skinny. Oh, I can't talk today. Size 6 skinny jeans and six-pack abs. So, it's about just changing the idea of why we want to take care of ourselves so that we can feel happy and strong and confident versus trying to achieve some perfect ideal that our culture has created for us.
Totally. So I want to get right into it and learn more about how you started on your own wellness journey and how that led to the things that you do professionally now.
Yeah. So ironically, I've always been into wellness. I actually got my degree in nutrition while I was in college when I was just, 20 years old. But I had sort of maybe not the right reasoning behind it. So I was a dancer and I had a lot of eating issues. And I chose to go into nutrition in addition to the dance because I wanted to learn how to be skinnier. So
is that very common in the dance community?
Yeah. So I was a ballet dancer, but I don't necessarily have a lot of things about my body that make me a great ballet dancer, but I'm not naturally the size that I need to be. Like my body's natural size is not a twig. And so in order to be that size, I had to do things from a young age, from 12 years old, to limit in order to be that size. And so, but what ended up happening was when I did the nutrition degree, as I was going through the program, instead of learning how to diet better, I learned what I was doing to my body. And so in the end, it actually helped me. And then I went through a lot of different things. I went through a time period after college where I was working a ton and not taking great care of myself. I ended up with very severe migraines, which meant I needed to work with a biological therapist. And that sort of started me really getting into, looking at holistic way of looking at how you eat and how you live. And then I had twins through an IVF journey. And then I didn't take care of myself at all. And then I had a surprise third. So my twins
congratulations.
was a surprise. They're 12 and 9 now. But
wow.
At the time that they were all like 3 under 3, I knew I needed to take care of myself, but I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't figure out how. And because I just kept pushing, my husband had to work a lot of hours. So it was really all on me. I ended up, when my youngest son was 9 months old, I got Bell's palsy. And I don't know if you know what Bell's palsy is, but it's a virus that affects the 7th cranial nerve. So that side, the affected side of your face goes like numb. It almost feels like you're having a stroke. And I do have some, now that I pointed out, people will see it, but I have a little bit of lasting effects just in my in my mouth. But it's usually from stress. It's like your body's stressed. So and so then that really made me realize I have to find my way back. Like, even though I don't see how I can take care of myself, it is non-negotiable. It's not optional.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So then from that experience and then having one child under 3, let alone 3 under 3, what was the first step that you started to take? What was the first maybe tangible steps?
Well, I can remember the first tangible step. I have a very clear picture because my third son was still pretty young. And I would strap him to my chest. And then I would take the double bob stroller and I would do my workout. So I'd walk as far as I could. I walked to this pier. I lived in Philly at the time. And then when I got to the pier, I would give them toys and a snack, and I would do like a little Pilates bar workout. Then on the way home, I would walk to the playground, and then they would get to play. So I kind of had to like, I think we get this idea that we need to move our bodies in the way that we did before we had children, and that we need to fit into our life in that way. But that way doesn't necessarily always work in our life after we have children. You know, once you have kids, it's like you realize like, geez, there's like literally no hours in the day, right? Like, you could literally fill every hour in the day with taking, even when your kids are in full day school, you know?
Yeah.
This morning, my husband and I were trying to make an origami boat for my 9-year-old because he needed it for school. Like, we're like watching YouTube.
Yeah. Reminds me of my household too, making origami, like, I don't know, birds and stuff.
We failed. We did not do a good job. But I think it's just the idea of changing. Like, you know, I have been on this 30-day Pilates mat challenge right now. So I've been doing the advanced mat series of the Pilates system every day for 30 days. I had COVID back in November, and I didn't get like full blown long COVID, but I had some remaining muscle weakness probably until about the beginning of February. So I feel like I lost a lot of strength. So I decided I was going to do this 30-day. So yesterday I was on my kitchen floor, like there was no time. Like I had all this stuff going on. So I laid on my kitchen floor while eggs cooked on the stove, while my dog sat at the freezer, like scratching for ice. But I think that the key is just to accept that like sometimes this is how it's going to be. So sometimes you're going to get to go to the Zen place and focus on you for 50 minutes. And sometimes you're going to have to juggle it in. And that's okay.
Yeah. That's a good point, that we think that, you know, our wellness looks like the same way it did pre-kids. And we all know that once the kids come, it's totally different. And you have to improvise because you can't go without like taking care of yourself. Like,
you can't fill from an empty cup. And I've learned from personal experience, if you're not taking care of yourself, eventually that's going to catch up to you, and something's going to happen to you. And that's happened to me a lot of times in my life, even before kids. Like if I'm pushing and I'm burning the candle on too many ends, all of a sudden I walk into a table and break my foot. Like I feel like the universe or God or whatever you believe comes in and says, okay, you know, you don't want to listen. I'm going to make this happen for you. You need some rest. And so I guess the goal is to listen, to do that before you need that, before something happens.
And I think that also takes a bit of a mindset shift for the mom too, and being okay that it's not exactly the way that you might have planned. Like I wanted to go to the yoga studio, or you know, exactly, I wanted like a full hour at my like quiet Zen place, and maybe it's just in the car, right? So and being okay with that.
All the time I'll do like a little presence practice because of my children's age, you spend a lot of time in your car because you're driving them places all the time. So, you know, I'll pull up somewhere and I just put my hand on my heart and I take some deep breaths and I just sort of like recenter myself. And now it's sort of become like my car is like a Zen place.
Yeah, sometimes I do it at the stoplight. Like I try not, I don't close my eyes, but like just like looking and observing things, like just being super present. So, and maybe it just takes like, you know, 30 seconds. So have you always been into Pilates, or how did that enter in your life?
So I was a dancer, and so I did some Pilates as I was like training when I was younger. But now that I do what I do, I feel like probably it wasn't really Pilates. It was like Pilates-ish, right? The stuff that I was doing. But then I taught dance before I had kids. So I taught dance for a really long time. And I knew that as I was having children, I didn't want to have to work every night while my kids were home from school. Like, obviously, this is like looking ahead and really thinking. That's what I do. I like look ahead and think ahead. But I knew I wanted to find something that I would be able to do during the day work-wise. And I had always loved Pilates. And then I decided to get trained. And honestly, like, because I decided to get trained so I teach classical Pilates, which means it's as closely related to what Joseph Pilates did. My training is very extensive. It's over 600 hours plus additional CEC. So it's a very deep training. And during that time, while I was doing all the trainings, it healed so many things in my body too. So I think even just doing the training, I think it was like 8 or 9, 10 years ago, showed me really how much more the power that Pilates has. And I really believe Pilates, like, I think they always say Joseph Pilates thought everyone in the world should do Pilates. And I really do believe that. Like, I think if everyone is doing Pilates, athletes would find better performance. Moms would feel stronger and more confident. I mean, think about how many times when you have young babies, you're always like lifting them up. Like, how many times people are getting hurt because they're like leaning over the crib and pulling the kids out. Like, all of those things, Pilates can change your life in that way.
So you mentioned the type of Pilates that you teach. Like, I'm not so familiar with the different types of Pilates. Yeah. I kind of barely understand or recognize the difference between Pilates and yoga. Like, can you like
I can.
Can you help like clarify for others who might be in the same boat as me?
Yes, and to kind of add on to that, like, there's always all these memes about like, as Pilates teachers, and like it'll show in the meme, the person will be like, "Oh, are you going to your yoga studio now?" And they're like, "No, my Pilates studio." It's not, people don't really know the distinction. But what my best explanation is that I have and I use all the time is I feel that yoga is actually more opening and Pilates is more centering. And there is a more meditative, like, sort of component to yoga where it's actually probably adding a little more, you're holding poses longer. But I think Pilates is meditative in the way that you have to focus on what your body is doing in order to do Pilates. And so I found that some people that really struggle with traditional meditation actually find that they get similar benefits just from coming to Pilates class, because they can't think about the 9,000 things that are usually running through their head, because then otherwise their body's not going to be able to follow the directions of the teacher.
I see. Okay, I get it now. I actually only recently understood yoga as a moving form of meditation. I used to be one of those people that knew I should meditate, but like found it so boring.
Yeah.
But then that's because I was thinking about it wrong.
Yeah.
And then I understood, like, oh, you can do yoga as like a way of meditating. And then now I understand, like, Pilates is also like a different way of meditating and like moving meditation pretty much.
Yeah. Anytime you're trying to like take your mind and focus on your body and be connected between your mind and your body, you're going to find that that's a meditative movement. Another thing that you might like if you struggle with like traditional meditation is tapping. I don't know if you've ever heard of tapping. I find that it works so well for me because I still can do something with myself. And
do you want to explain it for the listeners?
Yeah. So tapping is, I don't think it's meditation, but it feels a little like that, because usually when you're doing tapping, there's some nice soft music. You have someone guiding you. They're giving you affirmations and prompts as you go through. But what tapping does is it resets your nervous system using acupressure points. So you start on the side of your hand, then you would go above your eye, you go to the side of your eye, under here. And as you tap all these points, and the person that's leading your tapping is leading you through a series of affirmations, what you're really doing is resetting your nervous system. And so what I always tell people, like, if you can't focus on what the person's saying, it actually doesn't really, it's okay. It's really about moving through these points and kind of, because what really happens, right, when we were cavemen, right, if a bear was coming, our body would release a set of hormones that is going to make you run away. But while you're running away, your body uses up those hormones. So when you're done running away, your body is back into that more relaxed state because all those hormones. But now we don't run away from bears. We just get stressed. And so our body releases the hormones, but we never use it up. And then we're stuck in this fight or flight state, and we can't get out of it. And that's why we have anxiety. That's why we can't sleep. And that's why moving helps. Like, you know, they always say like moving helps stress,
Go
moving
for a
helps
walk.
anxiety, because you're burning off those hormones.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's interesting about tapping is that I've recently seen that they're like starting to teach it to children,
Oh
to
yeah.
kids, like young kids who maybe like 8 or 10.
I do it with my children.
Really, because as like a way to like handle anxiety or
Yes, I have
nervousness.
two of my 3 children struggle with anxiety. So particularly during COVID was for one of my one son, his anxiety kind of stayed the same through COVID, didn't get worse, didn't get better. But my one son, like, because of the virtual learning was very difficult for him. His anxiety, I mean, he was having like full on panic attacks
Oh
over like social
no.
studies. And I'm like, I don't care about social studies. Don't do the assignment. But he didn't want to let the teachers down. And it was just the style of learning did not work for him. And I used tapping a lot for him during that time when he would do it. Like, you know, as a 11-year-old boy, they don't always want to cooperate.
Yeah.
But I can always get them to do like hand on the stomach, big breath, feet on the ground. And that even just helps bring you out of your head and down.
Yeah, and recenter yourself. I think these are, well, one, they're great techniques for adults. And then two, I actually find that kids like tend to like grasp it pretty easily, like the concept of it. So my daughter, she has, I feel like she has like social anxiety, like nervousness. So I wanna like introduce her to that too, which is really fun and interesting.
Yeah.
But
how old is she?
She's 7.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't be surprised that she has social anxiety at the age that she had to go
right,
through
2
a global
years.
pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's not really used to being around tons of kids, which is really strange for that, like our kids are like in their memory, they have this chunk of time with like, oh, remember just being home and not being allowed to like see people. It's so odd, right?
It is. It is. I mean, I really do believe I think there's long lasting effects that need to be addressed with our children. Just even I'm like not trying to start a political statement in any way, shape, or form. We all needed the masks, but the masks bring in a whole other, when you can't see someone smile,
I know. You can't connect with them.
You can't connect. Like it's like,
kind of weird.
I see it as an adult, and then you imagine it as a child. It's like, I mean, and how long that they had to do that in their learning environment where they're supposed to learn to trust the adults that they're with. But how do you learn to trust someone if you can't connect to them?
Right, and they weren't even allowed to get like certain distance away, like all sorts of weirdness.
I just taught yesterday. I was in my kid's school for taught nutrition to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and like when they take attendance, so they don't do the distance anymore. They just dropped that recently, but the kids still come in and they sit really far apart for attendance, and like the gym teachers were telling me, because I had some downtime, I was hanging out with the gym teachers, and they said like they had to try and keep them apart except when they were actually playing a game. So at that point, if you're actually playing, the apartness wouldn't count. But like every other time in school, like they 3 feet, 6 feet,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel it's so strange, but hopefully it's gonna come back to normal, I hope.
I know. I hope so too.
So I was wondering, I when I think of Pilates, I think of like mostly it's women that do Pilates. Are there also men, and is there something like about it specifically that draws moms to this?
So actually, Joseph Pilates was a guy. He was a boxer, and so in his studio in New York City, it was actually probably more men than women.
Interesting.
Initially. And then his studio was located really close to the New York City Ballet Studios. And the director of New York City Ballet, George Balanchine, father of American Ballet, he realized that if he sent his injured dancers to Joseph Pilates, they would come back and we wouldn't be injured anymore. He'd fix them. So that is the connection that came with the dancer connection. And then I think once the dancer connection started, because dance is so female heavy, then this idea that Pilates was for flexible women, right?
That's kind of like what I would think too.
Yeah, I have been teaching for about 10 years, and I have taught everything from 10-year-old dancers to 86-year-old guy golfers to, I mean, I have taught everything under the sun, to male dancers, to runners, to triathletes, and it's just the idea. I think also during that Jane Fonda aerobics era, it came a little bit more like they felt like, you know, there are things in like the aerobics era that come from Pilates. Like when you lift your leg, you lay on your side, that comes from Pilates. And so I think that helps like kind of nail the coffin. So it's definitely like every Pilates studio I know probably mostly has more women in it than men. And I would say some studios have much more of a mix than others, and it really depends on how they brand their studio, but Pilates is really for everybody.
Is there anything about it specifically that you think that really draws like moms to the studio?
I think the core strengthening. So
Oh, yeah, for sure.
when
You know, once you have a kid, it's gone.
and here's the deal, right? Like I think that there's this idea in our culture that like we can have a baby and we don't have to do anything to get our body not back, because you know it's never going to be back. You birth the whole human, and like the expectation that it will be like before is really like an expectation that sets us up for failure. But right, I feel every woman should see a pelvic floor physical therapist after they have a baby. And of course, I think every woman should do Pilates, but every woman needs to figure out how they're going to strengthen their core.
Yeah. I think that this information has been super valuable for our audience, and I know that they'll find a lot of like, they can find a lot of comfort that it doesn't need to be one way as they're establishing and refining their wellness and their self-care. So do you want to share with the audience how they can connect with you, where they can find you and work with you?
Yep. And so I'll leave them with one thought, and that is progress over perfection. This is what I say all the live long day, right? And I say, you know, one small change at a time can make a big change in your life. They can find me on Instagram at Opal _wellness _studio. On Facebook at Opal Wellness Studio, but I'm much more on Instagram. They can also find my podcast, and it's at Well2U podcast on Instagram. It's called the Well to You podcast. It's on everywhere you listen to podcasts. My partner is a Pilates instructor who specializes in pre and postnatal Pilates. So there's lots of good, juicy stuff in there. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with the Mamaverse today on Instagram Live. You know, we are building our private community for women, and we'd love to have you invite you in as an expert to create some wellness activities for our moms and find some cool partnership. I'll connect with you afterwards about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to do that. And I'm sure my partner on the podcast would also love to do that. You guys can bring in, she does these amazing progressions of kind of like how to go from like, I just had a baby to a Pilates exercise like the 100. So it's steps. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'll connect to you like right after this, and I'll send something out to you.
Absolutely.
We can have something
really
fun
good.
In the
Thank you so much
Mamaverse.
for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. And we'll catch everybody on the next IG Live.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.